episode number 217 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Dr. Jenelle Kim. Dr. Kim is the founder and leader formulator for JBK Wellness Labs. Dr. Kim is carrying on the medical knowledge and wisdom of her lineage. She's devoted to integrating the philosophy, medical wisdom, and expertise of East Asia with the advancements of modern life and medicine of the West to touch and positively affect the lives of others. Dr. Kim is a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine and is nationally board certified in Herbology, Oriental Medicine, and acupuncture. Dr. Kim completed extensive training in East Asia under some of the most respected doctors in the field of Oriental medicine and is the custodian of her lineage's proprietary Bi Bong formulas. She has written a book, Myung Sung, The Korean Art of Living Meditation, which is available globally in 5 languages. In her book, Dr. Kim breaks down the principles of Myung Sung, offering a way to achieve a life of balance and happiness by enjoying the positive benefits of meditation every minute of every day. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
So excited to interview a fellow acupuncturist, and you have such an interesting story. I know that you're, how many generations of herbalists do you have in your family?
Yes. So I'm 9th generation. I'm the first woman in my lineage.
Incredible.
Which is, very special. And critical is a perfect word.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I would love for you to share your story. And a lot of things about you are really interesting to me. So I'm actually really excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for that, Michelle. The feeling is very mutual. Yes. So as I just mentioned, I'm the first woman in my lineage. My lineage comes from Korea. Interestingly, my mother is American, my father is Korean. So I always think that can be a really important place to start, given the fact that I came onto this earth with a kind of natural integration of East and West.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even to this day, it's not completely common, if you will, for, an Asian man to be married to an American woman, especially one coming from a family as traditional. And even in this day and age, as much as things are balancing and integrating, that's just the case. And so it's been a really beautiful path, that I have chosen. I speak on the 3 M's, which is medicine, meditation, and movement. And when it comes to the meditation, I speak of living meditation, which is a lifestyle. And one of the things I discuss is we all have a choice in life and everything that we do. And that'll be a big part of our conversation, I'm sure, today.
Yes.
But even when it came to my path, going back to, basically what the answer that I like to give you right now to your question, my path, although I was born into this to some extent, it was still always a choice for me. My father did not force me to do this. In fact, he really, these principles, this medicine was instilled in my life in a very natural way. Mm-hmm. And I find that right now, that's my favorite way to describe it, whether I'm speaking one-on-one or to thousands of people around the world. Because if it's natural and it resonates with us and it makes sense, we're able to, in my humble experience, what I've seen, people are able to incorporate that much more. And the same thing happened in my personal experience. So I grew up with this as part of my life, the medicine, the meditation, and the movement, those 3 M's, right?
Right.
But it wasn't until I was in my early, 19, 20, that I decided to go in this direction. I was actually on my path to studying Western medicine. So I grew up with the firstborn,
right?
And so my father is pretty strict. He would say I'm principled, Jennel, but I would say that a lot of us would say he was strict. I grew up with a lot of academics, went to great schools, but it was, long story short, when I was about 19, 20, it really hit me because I saw with my own eyes at probably the perfect moment in my life, or that moment, let's say, where I saw herbal medicine, acupuncture really change people's lives when nothing else could help. And I know that's part of your story as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes. And so and it was really just like that, like a light bulb. And I had a choice, and it was not an easy one. It was one of the biggest risks, if you will, I have taken in my life. And I've had a couple.
Was the risk changing from Western medicine path to Eastern medicine?
Oh, sure. honestly picking up and leaving. Like, Michelle,
Yeah.
my friends thought I was joking, and then they thought I had lost my mind. Like, what are you doing? So they knew it was a part of, who I was. But
How far
as I
along
said,
were
it wasn't.
you into what you were
I was
doing
a
before?
sophomore, so going into junior year of that particular course. So I finished undergraduate. I went on to my master's. Ultimately, I have my doctorate. So many, many years of schooling. But it was the most important decision of my entire life. And even from then, it started. I imagine now might be a great time to share this, but even in school when I was studying acupuncture, herbal medicine, I knew that's where I needed to be.
Yeah.
It was I knew it. That's what I was here for. Now I thought I would have clinics like my great grandfather, like many who treated patients in my lineage. And so that was my great dream to have. And again, long story short, as life would have it, I was basically brought down the path to have a lab as I have right now and educate on the way that I do right now, which is much different than being in clinic. I have a lab called JBK Wellness Labs. It's a contract manufacturing where I focus a lot more on herbal medicine. So in East Asia, it's much more common. It's pretty much the way that you choose either acupuncture or herbal medicine. Certainly you can practice both. Certainly you study both, but you can choose that particular path. And mine is more of a herbal medicine path because that is what has been handed down in my lineage, those secret formulas, right? As I know you are familiar with, and I'm, sharing with this part of the world. So that's kind of a long story short. So now I share our herbal medicine, the understanding of East Asian medicine and how we look at our bodies, minds, spirit, how it all connects and how we can balance.
Yeah.
And then I have the opportunity to share formulas in a very large way with people who don't know to look,
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. I'm
Well,
grateful.
I relate a lot to I really relate a lot to your story in the sense that I'm not a ninth generation herbalist, but it's interesting because I did grow up with a grandmother who really despised going to doctors. I mean, she was like, listen, if you know what to eat, if you eat like everything that you need is grown on the earth, basically.
Yes.
Like God gave you everything. This is what she would say. And she said, if you eat the right things, you don't need to go to the doctor and you don't need to take a pill. And it's interesting because this is really way back that she realized that pills had side effects and that they weren't like really compatible. And if you think about it, herbs and food have DNA. They still have genetic DNA, the intelligence that communicates with our intelligence. And therefore, they can work within our body in a way that doesn't cause. I had actually a teacher that talked about this. She was an Ayurvedic teacher, and she said that the side effect, it's almost like some of the pharmaceuticals. Yes, sometimes they do come from natural means, but they lose intelligence. They become just the chemicals. They become almost like robots that just keep going forward and don't stop. And that's why they're more likely to give us side effects. And I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I love that. Your grandmother clearly is very wise. And isn't it an interesting thing that even some who may not have, how can I say, certain kind of schooling, or maybe it wasn't necessarily taught to them in a very, what we would imagine like a linear way, maybe we can describe it as, but just through intuition. I certainly have people in my life, not coming from the lineage side, my Korean side, who felt the same. It just didn't really make sense. And that's why, isn't it funny, I started this whole thing with you today saying that. Have it make sense.
Yeah.
And when you speak on it this way, what just hit me is, and I speak of often, but in a different way, it is true. There is a place for Western, and maybe some people don't agree, but I'm a strong proponent.
I agree.
Just know I'm so happy, and it doesn't surprise me, right, Michelle? But you, as a human being, starting with what I said, we all have a choice, and we have to empower ourselves to understand what is good for us. Number one, we have to know even if something is imbalanced within our body. So many of us, particularly in this culture, it's a younger culture mixed with so many different cultures, and there's such beauty in that. But what we're finding is so many people are not in touch. Long story short, you have to really pay attention and be aware. And it is a daily, momentary practice. And when you do that, you can catch when something's off balance. A small thing, but those small things, if we don't pay attention, turn into big things. And so going to what you said, is all about balance. And so I love how you just described that, how your grandmother described it. I totally agree. Herbs, whole herbs in particular. And then you move on to what has been passed in my lineage, formulation. So that kind of takes it one step more, where it's so important to have particular herbal ingredients, but most of the time, the magic comes and the treatment and the medicine come from a synergy of ingredients and that perfect
Correct.
recipe. You heard me say
Yeah.
before, secret formula. I mean, that's
Yes.
what's been passed down, these secret formulas, but ultimately they're these perfected recipes. And
Yeah.
how each one of us, how those herbs come into our body. And that's one of my favorite things. How do we make this recipe, right? Or this formula?
Mhm.
Each herb has a role. And so I'm kind of like, oh, if we can all visualize what you were just saying, they're living organisms that come in and help to balance our body. And if you picture it that way, it can make that much more sense that, for example, oftentimes what modern medicine does is they take this herb and then they take a part of it and they enhance it or concentrate it or, and all of a sudden, let's not even get into too much detail. You can see that can become that much more off balance. Because here's this living organism, plant, this whole plant. And in Eastern medicine, we pick certain parts of plants sometimes, but ultimately it's that raw herbal ingredient, right? And it has a life of its own. And one way of the Western world, if you will, described it back in the early 1900s, mid-early 1900s, is adaptogens. Right. And so that's something I started talking about 20 years ago when I entered the wellness industry.
Yeah.
I was trying to find ways that would resonate maybe outside of Eastern medicine, because at that point, so many people are like, what are you even talking about? This is just 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, let's talk about adaptogens then, the same principle. And that's what they talk about. These herbs are so wise, these plants, and what they go through and how they survive when you put it into your body. It helps you to. I mean, what a beautiful thing.
It really is. Rhodiola, right? Rhodiola, isn't it? It grows in a very difficult climate.
Yes.
And it learns to adapt. And it's so interesting to me that herbs learn to adapt as they grow, and they provide almost like their lessons into your body.
Yes, I know it can blow minds. I mean, it still does. Even if I've grown up now my entire life, and it still can blow my mind. And let alone someone who has not heard of these things. But I think more and more people are ready, particularly in this part of the world, to understand that a little bit more, and accept that. And that is a very real aspect of it. Like you talk about rhodiola, many people have heard of ginseng, but that's what makes the different qualities of the herbal ingredients as well, right?
Correct.
So you can have one herbal ingredient that's $5, and you can have another that to the naked eye, you might not even be able to see the difference. And this one's $500,000, but because it was picked by a specific farmer of ginseng, and they call it farmer. It's different than, farmed type of situations here in the West, where it's on the top of a mountain in Korea, and the harshest of environments at times. And they even the understanding of even how you harvest that herb, and then who can even find that herb. Sometimes they say the herb won't even let you find it.
Oh, wow.
If you don't have the proper thing. I mean, that is just,
it makes sense. It
really
does make sense. I mean, there's so much to it. It's so vast, and there's so much to it. And it really is a science. And it's not just a science. It's not like just something that you kind of like look, it's really connecting with nature too on a different level. And my one question I had, for example, like cordyceps.
Yes.
Typically, it's very expensive because it grows on a worm. And, so in nature, it takes a really long time for it to grow, and it's very difficult to harvest. And now they're growing it in labs. I was just curious to see what your thoughts are on that, like nature versus labs, or if it makes a difference, or does it still hold on to the original integrity?
Yes, I wouldn't necessarily say, which I think people would not be surprised on, that, the way that it is found in nature is going to be the most powerful. It is going to be the most balanced. However, due to many factors that, we could certainly get into, but I don't know if that's exactly the purpose of this conversation. There are reasons why at times we have to, kind of evolve with what is appropriate given where we are in life. And so certainly cordyceps, grown as it is now in modern day, still has incredibly powerful benefits, but ultimately the comparison, I will always say, of course, found in nature. Nature is the most miraculous and the most wise and knowledgeable when it comes to.
But you've seen the benefits. I'm just curious from your perspective, because I know you have a lot of information. And also, my other question is, my other actually statement really is that a lot of people hear about herbs, they get very curious about it, but it's really, really, really important to speak to somebody who understands herbs, an herbologist, before taking anything, because I see that so many times. Patients come to me for the first time and they give me like a list of herbs that they found online. And I'm like,
Right.
it's medicine. It really is
Yeah.
medicine. You have to be careful. Sometimes it's not good.
Yes.
Certain tonifiers when you're sick, not so great. You don't want
Right.
to get that into your body more. You want it to come out. So you really need somebody who's trained and understands herbs in order to take
Absolutely.
them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, truly herbal medicine in any condition, whether it is the common cold to fertility to digestive issues or imbalances, let's say, every single person is different, but furthermore, each one of us has a different situation almost every single day. And I love it. I think understanding taking herbs, for example, with a common cold is a really great way to understand it.
Yes.
What I like to, for example, some of us, when we get a cold, it starts as a really sore throat. Right. And that's heat in the body. Let's just make it very simple. Or some of us have like a lot of, it's in our nose, it's in our sinuses. And it's a lot of, not to be too graphic, but it's important, like clear mucus, right? Clear mucus, as we know, is different than having colored yellow mucus. And so I'm not going to go much further than that, but that's so important because ultimately the sore throat, having yellow, that those heat symptoms are treated with herbs that are cooling. As you're describing. Now, there's a lot more advanced and complex ways of formulating, but in general, if people understand this, it's a really important thing. Now, if you have cold and you start introducing herbs that have cold, you're going to make it worse. And so that's exactly, I'm repeating what you're saying, Michelle, but that's such a beautiful thing for people to start to understand. And then when you go down this path of knowing why it is so important to speak to someone who knows what they're doing, you can start to see where, especially if you have more of a serious condition, how that can be not so great for you. For example, if you have really high blood pressure and you take tons of Korean red ginseng, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right.
But here's the other part that's a little more complex. A proper herbologist may actually even use Korean ginseng for someone with high blood pressure, but it is combined with the perfect, ingredients within that formula specifically for that person. And that's where it can get very advanced, but that's where the true healing can happen. So
and it's the dosage can make a difference. Like everything makes a difference.
Absolutely.
And that's why, 100% it's important. And I love the whole formulation, the synergy. I mean, it really is like a symphony. That's how I see it, kind of like within herbs, when you combine it, it looks different, it acts different, it responds differently in the body.
Yes. In fact, that's a whole part of it. Chinese medicine, of course, traditional Oriental medicine, including Korean herbology, because it all started in China, of course, and then, traveled to Korea, Japan. One of the most important parts about understanding herbal medicine is Dui-Yao, the art of combining. And because, as you said beautifully, one herb can have this benefit or effect, and now you combine it with another herb or a few other herbs, and all of a sudden that effect can either be enhanced, it can change, it can do so many incredible things. And that's what someone who truly knows what they're doing knows how to do. And so while I am grateful on one hand that so much is being shared right now, so it's opening so many people's minds, more people want to try different things. Certainly natural medicine, I feel, taking some supplements, for example, versus taking tons of prescription medicine, you're probably in a much more of a safe place to be experimenting sometimes. However, I find that that's really important. I'm happy you brought that up. It doesn't mean that you can just take whatever natural supplements and you're going to be in a great shape. It doesn't work like that. And every single person too. Yes. And it's about being aware. Proper herbal medicine, you see where your body's standing. And I kind of already mentioned this. Whether you are healthy or whether you have some kind of illness or imbalance. Even when you're healthy, you take things throughout your life to maintain that health. Herbal formulas to increase our circulation, our qi. That's a huge part of Eastern medicine, which I'm sure you've talked about before on the podcast. Qi and blood, they travel together. That's like the root of everything. You have to have an abundance of it, which nourishes all your organ systems, your muscles and joints, and you have to make sure it flows. And if you have those two things, in combination with the third, right? There's always the threes of eliminating whatever is not good for you and having that work properly in your body and mind and spirit for that matter as well.
Yeah.
That is true health. That is true beauty. That is true wellness. And so that means that no matter what you're taking, there's a good chance, in fact, it should be, forget the good chance, the proper way of taking care of yourself is your supplements and everything should actually be changing, quite frequently.
Yeah.
when it's more specific type of formulations and herbal ingredients. You can have your staples, taking
Yeah.
vitamin C on a daily, especially with
Right.
young kids like I have, taking some vitamin D3, great, taking some overall supplements that are very good for digestion, great. But then it should be a little bit more specific on the season, how you're feeling, your particular condition, so on and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. It's so important.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about, and I hope I'm saying this right, Myung Sung.
You said it perfectly, Michelle.
Oh,
so
cool.
impressed.
Awesome.
You're one of like 3 people out of
Oh,
hundreds.
nice.
Yes, good job.
Yeah, so it's the Korean art of living meditation. That's fascinating, and I'm excited to hear about this.
Thank you, Michelle. I am so excited to share. As I kind of mentioned, living meditation really is a lifestyle. It's a daily practice. It's a momentary practice, to be honest. The entire book is broken down into 8 chapters, or what I call 8 keys. And those 8 keys are tools that we can incorporate in our daily life. All of these 8 keys encompass or incorporate the 3 M's. So it starts with the 3 M's that I shared before: medicine, meditation, and movement. And the idea is, going one step deeper, that our ancient sages, teachers in my lineage and others, what they have taught us, if we incorporate proper tools to constantly balance and incorporate meditation, medicine, and movement into our life, we can achieve, a balance of health, of beauty, of wellness, of mind, body, and spirit. And that is ultimately all of our wish, whether we know it or not, or how much we want that or not. We are human, and it applies to every single one of us. And so that is Myung Sung, is translated as meditation in the Korean language. And really the key words here that everyone can remember, because that's a little bit hard to remember sometimes, is living meditation. So I am about living meditation. And yes, this is a phrase that I came up with, but it is the best possible way that I have come up with thus far that explains what has been passed down for thousands of years, this way of life. And ultimately it comes down to balance, whether it is our mind, whether it is our body, whether it is our spirit, our life. We have to find that balance. Just like there is day and night, we have yin and yang. Right?
Yes.
So if we know those words, if we don't, it doesn't even matter. Just know that there are 2 aspects that always exist in every part of our life, that exist to our health and everything that we're talking about. It exists in the herbs that we talk about. It exists in nature around us. Like I said, it is day and night. It is loud. It is soft. It is feminine energies. It is masculine energies. So you can just see that dichotomy, that duality is always in existence, just like that symbol. But the difference is everything is always changing. And that's been our conversation so far as well.
Yeah.
And so we are able to be aware of where we stand, ourselves, mind, body, how we feel, our spirit. And then in relation to each other, of course, and nature around us, that is the way to have living meditation. That is a way to attain calm, happiness, balance. And it means that we can't avoid anything in life. That is, again, that principle, that yin and yang. There's going to be good, there's going to be bad. There's going to be challenging, there's going to be happy. And we can't know one without the other. That's why it'll never disappear.
That is so true.
Right? I mean, and that's the beautiful part that certainly is very much resonating with me right now as well. It always does, sometimes more when I'm speaking to certain people that it just resonates with as well. But when you really start to feel that and you connect to that and you realize that we have to walk through this life and things are not always easy, and we can't necessarily avoid that. But if we're anchored in knowing that we are part of this universe and it's always been this way, it will always be this way. When we're in the hardest spot, whether it's our health, whether it's something that's happening in our life, whether it's a parenting, relationships, work, when we know that this is just part of the universe, and take a moment to take a breath and just realize, all right, I'm human. There are many other humans who have gone through this. I have gone through this before. How am I going to balance with this situation? And ultimately, what it means, what these 8 tools, these 8 keys of living meditation help us to do, in short, is it helps us to zoom out, right? So sometimes in life, we just keep looking like it's a human trait. In fact, key 3 is called dochi. It's stop being drunk on your own thoughts. So if we, in any part of life,
I love that. That is so good.
Whether it is in a intention with someone, whether it is with our health,
that's
if we can take
dochi,
DOE, and then the second word is CHI. So I spell it the way it sounds because it's just hopefully easier for people. There's not a word for this or a phrase for this in the Western language, but it is stop being drunk on your own thoughts. It's when we're intoxicated by our own thoughts. We can't see clearly anymore. So we're just even aware that this can happen. Once again, it comes down to your choice. And what are you going to do about it? And when it comes in life, living meditation. So meditation Why do we do meditation? To become aware, to become grounded, to gain perspective. Exactly what I'm saying. There's so many ways to describe it, but living meditation means it doesn't just stop when we are doing seated meditation techniques, when we are doing breath work, when we are doing these things. Every moment we have a chance to incorporate this. And of course, these types of techniques, seated, certain movements, qigong, yoga, they help us to continue that. But this lifestyle, this living meditation, these 8 keys are tools that we constantly remember to create good habits or bad habits for ourselves. And it comes down to, how are we going to handle any situation? Do we react or do we respond? Reaction comes from emotion. And that can be eating, that can be fighting, that can be stress. When we react, we act on emotion. And we can do that. It's our choice. But just remember, emotions come and go. You're so hungry, you eat, you're not hungry anymore. You're so sick, you feel so sick, you take your medicine, you remember, oh, I feel so sick, I'm so grateful for my health, you get better, and oftentimes it's easy to forget how grateful we are for how good we feel. I mean, in every aspect of life, that's emotion, and it exists, and it's important, it makes us human, right? But if we let life kind of drive us by emotion, we can see where we can be in a lot of trouble. It becomes chaotic. We get anxious, we get frustrated, we get depressed, because it's just, who can deal with that? Yeah. It's impossible, to be honest, to live a happy, calm life, letting your emotions run you. So when you respond, when you plug into the Tao, so it's all about the Tao. Or the
I was going to say that. I was going to say this really,
usually I start with that. Michelle,
it's like the Tao, what you're talking about. Really, it's the way.
Yes, it is the way, and it is the Tao. And usually I start with that, but this is how it goes today. And of course you resonate with this and know this. But yes, I speak on the Tao. That is the universe. It's the way of the universe, the principles that I just shared, the yin and the yang, the ups and the downs. And ultimately, one of the things I love the most, and I hope people see, and so far I have yet to find someone who doesn't in some way, shape, or form, that when you speak on the Tao, when you speak on the universe, the beautiful thing is, it doesn't matter your religion, it doesn't matter your belief system, it doesn't matter your gender, your ethnicity, your age, because we are all human. And that's really what it goes down to, all human in this universe. And so that's the whole thing. So if we react, we take things out of ourselves, we start to let emotions drive us, let all the aspects of life, and that can be really hard. We make life so much harder for ourselves. And if we respond, whether we're speaking of our health, which we talked about a lot today, being aware of what's happening in our body, knowing and educating ourselves of what is out there, finding people who are experts who can help us on this path, but we have to be in charge and know what's happening inside of us. And the same thing happens with, the way we relate to others, and the way we relate to things that happen. And so that is what living meditation is all about. And through, once again, medicine, taking care of ourselves, your grandmother, I could not agree more. Eating properly is one of the most important things in this life. It is probably the greatest medicine, and here I am. My whole life is about herbal medicine, and but eating properly is so important. So that's eating, taking proper supplements. We are human, so no matter how well you take care of yourselves, it is our nature. We have to keep maintaining and preserving that. And then incorporating movement. It's another way of keeping that flow, right? I'm a strong proponent of traditional martial arts, qigong, tai chi. Same principle applies to yoga. Those ancient practices or exercises that not only exercise your physical self, like I like doing other things as well, whether it's weights or running, that's also good for us. However, the traditional arts connect a little bit deeper into our body. They start to really work with our organ systems, muscles, joints. So it's not just, oxygenation, circulation, muscle strength. Now we're talking about chi, for those that resonates with, your vital energy, and how to connect with that, with our breath. And so movement can help us, is actually, I think, which is why I'm starting to teach a lot more Myung Sung moving meditation classes, can tend to be one of the quickest ways to actually make us feel good in any point throughout the day.
Absolutely.
It's an interesting. So, and then finally, living meditation, which is the third M, meditation, is all that we've been talking about. It's just this way of life. It's a training of our mind. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because when people think meditation, they just think of sitting still, but living meditation, that's a beautiful way to really put it, to incorporate it. And I think when you were talking about resisting things that we don't like, actually, it's the resistance that causes the issues. It really invites problems in a sense. And I remember hearing, I've been really interested in this topic for a long time, even before I went to school for acupuncture, just about non-resistance and Taoism. And I started incorporating it little by little into my life, even with my kids or relationships, or even difficult difficult moments, where instead of resisting, just getting into my body. And so you're talking about like movement, getting into your body could be a really powerful thing. So rather than trying to change what's outside of you, becoming more aware of your internal dialogue.
Absolutely. Exactly. It all has
that's
to,
where the
because
power is.
Yes. Yeah. Beautifully said, Michelle. I obviously could not agree more. When we take it outside of ourselves, it can become chaotic, because now we don't have any root. It's just, and that's why I was saying, it's like you start to just ride the winds of life, your emotions, and that is just a really dangerous way to live and can become very uncomfortable. That is where anxiety, stress, like I said, depression, that's where all of this comes from. Obviously you have to go much deeper, start to look into this, how we change our habits. But the reality is it doesn't always have to become so complicated either. I'm a huge person on just making things as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Why are we trying to make life more complicated than it already is?
Exactly.
And sometimes it literally just entails, all of a sudden you feel, because we're aware, when you become more aware, you can literally feel your breath start to increase. You're not breathing properly. You're starting to feel tight, uptight, mentally, physically, spiritually. And when we start to become aware when these things are happening, right then and there, we have the choice and the power to even just take a breath and realize that we're doing it. Why am I so stressed out about this right now?
Yeah.
Is it going to be there in an hour? It's what, and I know we've all heard these things, but really to start to practice that is living meditation. And then where do we look? Key number 1, I won't go through all of the keys. I already shared key number 3, which we like, stop being drunk on your own thoughts.
I love
that. Key number 1, of course,
so
is know your true self. But that's a lifelong, this is not like a chapter or a book that you read and, we got it. Great. Let's keep going with life. I wish, but it just doesn't work that way. But it has to start with you. And then from there, you can start to look at situations. You start to, as I began talking about, you zoom out, you change your perspective. You look a little bit more at the whole picture, not just what you think you see in the moment. And that is the strongest practice. And it basically applies to every aspect of your life. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Just takes a couple seconds and no one has to know. From the other end, it just looks like you're maybe sitting there quiet for a second. And you are. Take a moment, you take a breath, and you zoom out. Why is this person saying this to me? Maybe, or someone you're walking down the street and they do, or driving in a car and they do something you don't like. You can get real tense and get upset, and that hurts you mentally, physically, spiritually in that moment. The more you let this happen, the more damage it can do. So when we feel that, it is natural, it's okay, but what do we do when we feel that? Are we going to react right away and do the same thing back? Is that going to help anything? Maybe you choose to do that. So be it. No one can change that. Only you can. But maybe you realize, what? Maybe that person had a bad day and has nothing to do with me. And I'm not going to let this hurt my day. I'm not going to I teach this to my boys, 9 and 5. They get, and what a beautiful thing to start to teach the younger generation, younger people this as well, because then they get to make these habits that much sooner. And that's exactly how I was raised,
I kind of wish everybody knew this in the world, because I feel like it would look so different.
It would, Michelle, and I haven't really shared this with anyone, but I'm thinking of what the next book it will be. And I'm so grateful in my life to have the opportunity to have so many options. I can go down the beauty and wellness route. I can go down this route, but I have to tell you what's been on my mind a lot. And here I am kind of talking to you now in your community, but what keeps hitting me is, maybe I make a children's book based on these principles, because it is just so important right now. And we look around at our world and we see the way certain things are going. And I love that you just said that, because I could not agree more. Can you imagine what the world would look like if we learned these things a little sooner, if we all practice them starting now? It would just be different,
No doubt. So. And a lot of times I do talk about how with acupuncture, obviously I practice in person. We do, with acupuncture, it does help move the chi, but you don't necessarily need acupuncture. You could do other things as well. I mean, obviously that's what I do. And I think it's amazing. It's a quick way to move the energy. But like you said, you mentioned Qigong. There's a lot of ways to move your energy, also mentally. And what's amazing about your mind and your thoughts is it really is this reflection of what's going on in your body, and vice versa. You'll see it kind of go back and forth. You'll constrict your body if your mental thoughts are constricting. And vice versa. And so doing this, obviously my listeners are mostly fertility and reproductive health. And it's interesting how people want to go directly to fixing reproductive health. And I always say this, is that it's a reflection of overall health. When your body feels right, then it becomes more ready to reproduce. And so it's really important sometimes to have patients, they come in, they're like, I want to treat fertility. And I even give them a list of questions, and sometimes they'll just skip over everything else and say, I just want to treat fertility. And then I have to go into the whole conversation. This is the whole, like, fertility is a reflection of everything in your life, like everything. And it's a whole. You are whole. You are not parts and pieces. You are a whole. And it really comes down to you treating your own well-being, because that's like the cornerstone. That's the foundation to everything. So a lot of what you're talking about is really implementing and incorporating a lifestyle every single day, so that you don't have to just take some time out. And you can. I'm big on meditation and really taking the time out, but it's not, it just doesn't just depend on that. It's everything.
Right. Yes, I could not agree more. And again, 100% when it comes to fertility and your reproductive system, that is actually the time you are creating a life.
Yeah.
It is the time you need the most vital life. You need the most chi and the most blood and the most everything of abundance and flowing, and so that is why everything that you're saying, that's exactly what I teach as well. It's so incredibly important. And of course, we are not just a part, hence holistic. We are all of this. Mm-hmm. We say these things a lot, right? Mind, body, spirit, mentally and physically. And when we really stop, sometimes it's important. We have to stop and hear what we're saying.
Yeah.
Mind, body, spirit. And then it does become this interesting cycle in every aspect of our life, but especially when it comes to fertility and our reproductive system. Mm-hmm. If we overstress, it exactly affects, so it can almost become stressful, but don't let it. Sometimes it's just important and if we start, the sooner we start, the better. And if you're right in the moment, then just start now. There's no better time than right now. But think of it as just building chi. So when you're starting to get uptight, what is more important right now? I have to build my chi. It becomes a really funny thing. Sometimes I'll say on the beauty end, because of course that's kind of a huge part of what I do, making skincare for, companies around the world. And what I've started to say to people, because I think it resonates, stop being so frustrated, stop being so stressed. You're going to have lines, you're going to have wrinkles. And it's such a simple, funny thing that like for some reason makes people stop. They're like, oh yes. Like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to be that concerned about whatever is making you concerned right now? Sometimes it is. And then in that case, is it going to go anywhere anytime soon? Are you going to continue to just keep kind of putting a toll on your body, especially during this important time? Those are the types of things that we can ask ourselves, the bigger picture. We're not going anywhere, God willing. The issues are not going to go anywhere. So what are we going to do to continue to be abundant, to live naturally? I'm not saying we can find this place, if we're living in this society at least, where, different than my father, my mentor, who spent many years learning all of this in the mountains of Korea for many portion of his life. There's other pros and cons to that. On one hand, it can be so peaceful. On another, it is literally surviving, from wild animals and food and things that we don't necessarily, I don't think we're afraid of getting eaten by a tiger, sitting here on this podcast. But seriously, However, on another note, sometimes I wonder, maybe that would even be more simple than some of the stressors of our life, of our day to day. So it's so important in life to have a spark, when we're in a place that is challenging, and you have to find what that is. Is that faith? Is that family? Whatever that is, find something where we can find gratitude. In my life and my experience, and what has been taught, maybe in different words throughout the centuries, is you have to find something that keeps you holding on, your purpose, right? And that gets you out of that moment of that valley, right? Because there's peaks and valleys in life. And that's a really important thing as well. And sometimes what can really help us, actually not sometimes, based on centuries of wisdom, what can help us is exactly what we're talking about. Eating properly, taking certain supplements that can help us to balance and get ourselves and have the strength to get us, even when we're happy. It's never too high, never too low, never too happy, never too sad. So even when we're in great moments of life, feel that, appreciate that, remember that. But even still, if we want to be true and correct on this principle, don't go too high either. It's a really interesting, because I'd be incorrect to not mention both. And so but finding what can help us in moments where we're feeling really down or sad can really help. right? And so again, doing movement is a great way to kind of get us out of a stagnant period. So oftentimes when we're stressed, when we feel anxiety, when we feel sadness, that's stagnation in our body. And we can go into a million details of how you have that stagnation, but just all you have to know really is that something's not flowing. That's why you're starting to feel that way, right? And so when we do movement, again, when we eat properly, take certain supplements, it helps our bodies to start to get that balance back. And when we're more in balance, we're able to handle more. It's that simple.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
And of course, the meditation, the third M, is exactly doing this. That is living meditation, knowing when to do movement, when to take certain medicine, how to eat properly, how to zoom out, look at a perspective a little bit differently, find the sparks that we need to get ourselves out of a hard time, whatever that might be for you. For me, faith is a huge part. You know I'm connected to something bigger. Whatever we want to describe that or define that as, so be it. But I know I am part of this universe. I know that this life in general has existed for thousands of years before I got here. And I imagine and hope that it continues for thousands, eternity from the point that I leave this earth, but I am part of this. And it's a beautiful thing. And I always wish that I can communicate this the best way possible because I feel it at times. When you really feel that connection throughout time, to each other, to the universe, you just don't feel alone. Because I know a lot of people, especially after the last couple of years, can feel very alone sometimes, whether it's in their particular situation. I mean, and meaning you can be around, I'm sure many of you resonate with this. I wish it was not the case, but it's true. You can have tons of people around you all the time and you can feel alone.
That's
true. When you really stop and realize that principally, that's not the case. You're not alone. There's someone out there that understands, whether it's in history, maybe even in your own lineage. We all come from a lineage, no matter what it is, you are part of this whole thing. And it just makes it feel a little bit more, I can do this, And so I think that's really important. That's a key part of living meditation.
Yes. Definitely. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, I don't know if you've ever seen this. Have you ever seen the Eddie Murphy movie, The Golden Child?
So long ago, Michelle.
So long ago. So, it's a funny movie, but there was one part of the movie where he's sitting in front of this fire and there's a dagger inside the fire. He needs to reach for the dagger and there's a little cup of water. So his option is like, what do I do? Do I throw the water into the fire? And then he was going to, and then he's like, no. And he drank it and that cooled the fire. Then he was able to get the dagger and take it out. So rescue the golden child. But isn't that like such it's a comedy, yes. But that moment speaks volumes as to how life is. Like our initial reaction is we want to just react to what's outside of us. But it's actually within us that feeds. If we feed ourselves, we feed everything else that's outside of us. We're able to do so much more. So if you want to feed your life, if you want to get somewhere within your life, feed yourself first. Yes, it's so very important. You become part of the universe. You become part of everything, right? So you're in that. It's that same principle, and it is profound. It's very applicable, but it is profound to help to have us wrap our head around it. But that's very much something that my mentor, my father, taught me. You become part of it, and that's kind of what I'm hearing you say as well. And it is a kind world. Of everything, all of the answers can be found within you and in nature around you. I mean, what an interesting thing. Any answer that you wish, on any aspect of life, it's there. Yeah, it is. It's not always what we're looking for. Sometimes I find it important to ask patients, to ask people, what is it that you're even looking for? A lot of people don't know. What is it that you're looking for? What is going to make you happy? And it's really a funny thing because life is so fast right now. It is so important sometimes to have these moments. I don't care if it's in your grocery store and you're talking to yourself in the, in the freezer section. Whenever you feel yourself doing that, stop for a second and ask yourself, why am I so stressed right now? Or what am I looking for? What's going to make me happy? What is my purpose of doing this? Because you'll find that sometimes you get stuck in that cycle, that never ending cycle, and you even lose track. And now you're searching for something you don't even know. Right. Of course, that's going to bring you anxiety. Take a step back. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think about like the fertility journey itself. It breeds a lot of self-doubt because it's just sometimes you're told things about your body that are not true. I mean, I've gone through that route myself, and
Yes.
it challenges you on so many levels, which is why it's really important to take a step back and
Yes.
to realign with yourself, or start to listen to your body and start to listen to yourself and feed your soul, because you really need to charge that battery. Otherwise,
Yes.
you can get so lost in it.
Yes, yes, and it is really key, because one of the most important things, particularly when you're in a stage of your life where you want to have children, focus on reproduction, focus on fertility, you know, as I said before, and I know you probably talk about this all the time, that is the time that we need the most abundance of chi and blood and circulation, all those things as possible. And worrying and obsessing directly affects our spleen, or our digestion, our middle, right?
Yep.
And that is the place where we transform and create the most chi. Now, of course, every aspect, our lungs bring in chi, all of it, but our middle,
That's
our
the
digestion
center. It's the middle. It's the center. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And it's not easy to ask somebody. It's not easy to ask ourselves sometimes, stop worrying, stop obsessing, but it is very vital. And these are ways, these are tools that can help us to zoom out and get ourselves out of that, whether it is movement. I invite everyone to try a bit of the movement that I'm speaking. More of those, that breathing, that qigong, that yoga, anything. And there's certain in qigong, which is why I personally love it so much. It's a very simple but very powerful movements that can take a couple minutes, and you can do it anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere.
And it's just moving into something else, which can help, because again, trying to stop worrying is resisting that. So it's kind of like that that's not going to be and a lot of people get told that, but that's not exactly the way really that it's going to be helpful for anybody. The easiest way is, like you said, go towards something that might make you feel good, like movement, where you're able to kind of take your attention somewhere else and move that energy, move that stagnation.
Yes, really, really important. And you will feel a difference. You will, absolutely. Yep. Even if it's the smallest bit, you will feel a difference. And then from there, another huge thing, like I said, is gratitude. We hear this all the time. And so I don't want to be another person, or maybe I do, it depends.
Maybe it's worth hearing it all the time, because it's so good.
I agree with you. But again, we can say these words all the time, but stop and think about that just for a second. Really think about it. Gratitude. I have gratitude. I have gratitude. Okay. I have gratitude. I have gratitude that I'm here right now. I have gratitude from getting past this thing that happened in my life. That gratitude can lift you up faster than anything I can possibly imagine, whatever that is in your life. And so that's another, if you combine movement and a moment of thinking of what you truly are grateful for in this life, I guarantee you're going to feel a little bit better, probably a lot better. And then you just start to make that a habit. Whenever you feel that way, do a little something. You don't have to go and do some, meditative practice or movement, or, journaling for 2 hours, just a couple minutes. Do this for yourself. And then it starts to become a habit, and you keep that flow, because that's what it is all about. Going back to the beginning of our conversation. As long as we have flow, everything, flows that much better in life, and we can connect to the universe and into ourselves.
I mean, that is just such a beautiful way to end this, because obviously we don't have more time. I keep talking to you because these are concepts and that you just know they resonate true. Like you said, when it resonates in your body is true. The Tao, all of these, I mean, it's not even a philosophy. It really is a way of life. And there's so much wisdom to it. And the reason why it's been around for so many centuries is because they're onto something. That lesson and that teaching, it works, and it doesn't it doesn't go out of style. And so I always say that really, it stands the test of time.
Yes.
Truly.
And there's no greater test than our experience. Than experience, the human experience. And I say that often as well. It's been in existence, and it's still around because it works. It's that simple. So try
I love that.
Yourself,
it's so good.
And, yes.
So for people who want to reach out to you, read your book, check out like everything that you have going on. You have a great Instagram, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
How can people find you?
Instagram is a great place. I really do. I've come to find and have a lot of peace with social media because it is a way that I can connect with so many people and hopefully give these little, my wish is applicable, short tips on whether it is any of those 3 M's, the meditation, medicine, the movement. So social media is a great place, particularly Instagram. My book, of course, I hope that is a way to understand the Tao in a very applicable and simple manner. That is my wish. This is what's been handed down in my lineage for centuries, but ultimately it connects to that greater. And that's Myung Sung, the Korean art of living meditation. If you just look up living meditation, you will find it anywhere books are sold. So it's through Penguin Random House. It's distributed. And then my website is another place you can find me at JennelleKim.com. And I certainly am working on creating more courses and different things. It has come to my attention, people want more. So I will continue to do that. And I promise to always do my very best to just make it simple and short and applicable. So that is where you can find me.
Well, Dr. Jenelle Kim, it was such a pleasure talking to you. I can feel that you live what you teach. You could just feel the energy come through the Zoom. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It really has been wonderful.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.